Okay, verses 14 and 15. It says, take special note of anyone who does not obey our instruction in this letter. Do not associate with them in order that they may feel ashamed. Yet do not regard them as an enemy, but warn them as you would a fellow believer. Now, there is no one today who has the spiritual authority of Paul or the other apostles. I cannot write a letter to the congregation expressing my ideas and thoughts and say if somebody doesn't do what I'm telling them to do, or if they do not agree with me, take note of them and pull away from them. If you ever see a letter over my signature that says that, either stone me or you can assume it wasn't me, okay? But what we do have is we have the New Testament. And so all of us are responsible for obeying and living out the New Testament teachings. And Paul says here that we should take special note of anyone who doesn't do that. Anyone who isn't committed to living the New Testament truths. Take note of them. Now, some have suggested that to take note just means to be on the lookout for them. Others have suggested that Paul is actually encouraging the church to keep written records of those who have had to be disciplined by the church. Don't know. And Paul says here that if it is necessary for the church to pull back from fellowshipping with an individual, the intended consequence of that pulling back of the fellowship is that the offender might feel ashamed. That they might feel ashamed. And the idea of feeling ashamed is that they might take a look within themselves. Take a look deep inside. But even if the church must pull back from them, Paul is very clear that the spirit and attitude of the church must not be that they are an enemy. That attitude has no place in the church. Okay? Instead, we are to consider them a brother or sister in Christ. Now, as you think about that, what do you imagine that would look like? We have to, somebody's under whatever you want to call it. You want to call it church discipline. You want to call it disfellowshipping. If you want to call it pulling back the fellowship, you're kind of no longer socializing with that person. And yet, how do you do that and still treat them as a brother or sister in Christ? Treat them as somebody you love. We have several people in here who have been in church leadership. If you have had to, again, whatever you want to call it, church discipline, disfellowship, whatever you want to call it, if you have had to go through that, my experience is that's the hardest thing in the ministry. If it's not, then it wasn't done right. You know? Because a brother or sister is out of step. And it's kind of like Galatians chapter 6. You know, you need to go and restore them, but you better watch your own self, buddy. Because it's easy to do it with pride. It's easy to do it with the wrong tone. It's easy to be self-protective in it. It's easy to damage when you don't want to damage. So I think that's why it has to be something that is absolutely bathed in prayer and humility. And love, of course. Yeah.